Hey, good evening and welcome to Fish on Northwest, and we always thank them for their contribution. So with that, thanks for tuning in. We got another fantastic show lined up for you this evening, as we do each and every Thursday, 6 p.m. You can find us right here via Facebook or on our YouTube channel. If you haven't gone over to our YouTube channel, Barnum, and at this point I don't know why they wouldn't have, but starting to gain some traction over there. This show is it lives there on our YouTube channel. Of course, we put up additional videos, how-tos, the cooking segments, all of it is there on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. So tune in on either one. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you make sure you never miss an episode or anything that we put out there on a premiere, you'll get notified for. So with that, how was your week?
Busy.
You starting to feel out how much of a grind this show is?
Yeah,
times,
we
right?
got a huge week ahead of us this week.
Yeah.
A busy weekend. Like it's for real now.
It's for real. We're not going to slow down. We're going to keep going. As a matter of fact, we're cranking it up as much as we can and trying to find time, obviously, get out there and enjoy the outdoors ourselves with fishing and getting to, get out and start drawing the bows now and start dialing in things that we're going to work towards in the fall. With all that, there's so many things going on, believe it or not. There is only so many hours in the day, although right now with staying light till almost 10 o'clock at night is kind of nice. So, but if you pull yourself indoors and find time to sit down and watch us on the evening at 6 p.m., we appreciate that. So with that, Barnum, there is always plenty going on around the Pacific Northwest and beyond, around Puget Sound area, and paid attention to a few things going on this past week. You'll make note that there were a few stories published about WDFW and the Minter Creek debacle, where we lost the, at the time it was 6.1 or 6.2 million Chinook. Now it's been down to about 4.1. They've actually received at least half of those back from other hatcheries and tribals and tribal hatcheries and whatnot. So all told, we're still down a couple million in South Puget Sound out of the Minter Creek facility based on that loss of power back, if you remember, December 14th, 2018. And again, initially it was like, oh my God, we've lost 6.4 million. You shouldn't have.
Yeah, all of them.
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah, I mean, that was the original. I was just watching the old news story on it, and it was pretty much at the original first thought, worst case scenario, we've lost them all.
Lost them all.
The entire batch.
Didn't they mention chum too? They raised, well, they wouldn't have had chum yet, but they raised chum and Chinook there. And on the heels of all the efforts going in to produce more Chinook throughout Puget Sound, and South Puget Sound is a really important component of that, based on the migration of those fish and where those orcas will migrate to feed. This all has to do with, providing for the orcas and, of course, recreational angling. But that being said, there's been a lot of effort gone into, on WDFW's half, digging into this to find resolution.
Which is great, because that was the biggest fear I think most sportsmen had, was like, oh, this will be swept under the rug. This will be forgotten about. And 2 months from now, the world will forgot that we lost 4 million Chinook. Yeah.
And to their credit, they did not. And they handled it like, well, you work for yourself. But if I was to screw up substantially at work, there's investigations, there's a line of questioning, there are policies and procedures to follow, and then there's discipline to be handed out if discipline is due. And in this case, it was blatant disregard for a recognized, they did actually have a standardized process where they are to be checking the generators every 2 weeks. There was a system in place, and they failed miserably with folks working at that, supervisors in charge of that, and nobody was holding anyone accountable. Prior to that thing it not starting at a critical time when it needed to. 67 days prior was the last time that generator was checked.
So this generator doesn't fire when it's needed to, and then kind of reading through some accounts, it kind of tends to see that nobody even really knew how to operate this thing.
They didn't know how to troubleshoot it. Get credit to the younger hatchery workers that were trying to do something. They knew they had about a 30 to 40 minute window. If they lost water going over the trays, the lack of oxygen, those fish were going to die. So they were trying to come up with a makeshift pump. They even had a couple of firefighters show up, with a pump, trying to find a means of putting water over these incubation trays to try and stimulate and keep the oxygen going so they wouldn't lose all these fish. As it turned out, all their efforts were none of it would work, and ultimately they also were focused on trying to get the generator going. It wasn't until 3 or 4 hours later where they finally got to fire off. As they dug into this investigations, they realized, based on the logs or lack thereof, there was no preventative maintenance on that particular generator or facility for 67 days, when it's been in the policy, it's supposed to be done every 2 weeks. Now, I work in emergency services, and we have a lot of equipment that we got to check daily, weekly, monthly. Some of the stuff that we don't use every single day, but we have to be assured that it is going to work when we need it, we do a weekly on it. And, you know, it's kind of crazy. We call it a weekly, and we check it every week, right? And digging into this, as they resolve the issues, discipline those involved, you had supervisors. One was demoted, one was suspended for a short time, and somebody else received a written disciplinary action, in their which is pretty much common practice for most governmental agencies or entities of that structure, or business or anything else. You have a process and you have a disciplinary process. Some folks on social media are in the camp of, oh, they should have all lost their jobs. Well, again, okay, yeah, it's on their shoulders. They screwed up. Laziness, lack of really giving a crap, whatever it was, it's now been observed. It's now been, they've figured out, okay, this is what has been going on or hasn't been going on, and they followed through with appropriate disciplinary action.
And now maybe they can use this as a lesson to be spread across all the hatchery systems and make sure this is handled, because the most frustrating part about this is this happened in the middle of December. I mean, if you are from the Pacific Northwest, you know that's storm season. Like, you expect wind and rain every single day. It's not like this happened in August, where it's like, okay, well, you guys haven't checked the generator for 67 days. I can see why it's been 90 for 2 weeks straight, you know? Well,
what about the fact that the weather, that storm was predicted? So, above all else, you should go, oh, when's the last time we checked the generator? Well, nobody knows. Well, we better get out there and check it, because if we lose power and these fish are in their incubation stage, this could be serious. But nobody even did that, And they were reactionary instead of being proactive. And all the effort they did after the event had taken place didn't make a difference. They lost them all. Moving forward, they've now documented and have routine checks going on. They have a policy in place. Last check, it's been noted that generator's been checked every 5.5 days, which,
as it should be.
Now we're being, now we're being a little overkill on it. But hey, I'm in the camp of once a week, man. Check your systems once a week. Most of you guys at home that have backup generator systems on your residences, if it's set up to come on automatically when you lose power, a lot of those systems are set up to auto start once a week. Just so you know that it's working, it cycles through, it warms it up, shuts it down, the whole deal. Once a week is probably a pretty good plan. For those on social media that were disappointed to say, oh, they should all lose their jobs, and that's not enough discipline, I'm kind of in the camp of, it's been now observed gross negligence. They've gone through the process. They've resolved it. We now have a system being checked 5.5 days. I think they're heading down the right course. And this falls under that entire umbrella of transparency and accountability, which meeting after meeting and year after year, folks are saying WDFW can, go pound sand. We want them held accountable on this. We want transparency on that. And they're giving it to you. I mean, they're falling on the sword going, we screwed up. And they took it to the highest level of Director Suswin, who said, our folks screwed up, and this will not happen again. The 80 or so facilities they have, and the ones that have backup generator systems, you can bet things are in place, and supervisors are going to be held accountable. And if they're not, guess what? We're going to talk about it. Or we're going to get people in here or on the phone who should be overseeing those folks, asking, why did this happen again? Hopefully, we don't have to have that conversation and we're moving on. So I'm just glad to see, and a few of the stories and write-ups, a few of the news stations have been following this to see what was going to happen. There's people paying attention, I believe, more so because, again, they want transparency and accountability. And
I think you're going to see anything salmon related over the next few years. You're going to see a lot of media coverage from even the major media outlets because of the orca deal.
Absolutely.
This is a hot topic.
They're under a microscope.
Right.
So speaking of under a microscope, You had put a post up earlier in the week
about,
or a few days ago actually, of a young girl who was attacked or drugged down in shallow water along a beach by a seal.
Yeah, this is a crazy video if you watch it. If you go to our Facebook page, Fish Hunt Northwest, and check out the link, scroll down a few stories, it's there. It's a 13-year-old girl that is just kind of dancing and singing in the surf, I believe near Pismo Beach, California, which is a very beautiful place, kind of off the pier. I've been there myself. Beautiful place. She's kind of dancing, having a good time, being videoed by her parents, I think, in the waves, and a sea lion actually comes up and just grabs her right by the thigh.
It was a sea lion?
Yeah, right out of the waves. And it's just like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so the sea lion lets go of the girl, thankfully, and then continues up on the beach. And wildlife officials from that area are saying that it actually continued up on the beach and started biting on like a staircase going up to a lifeguard tower.
Like a chew toy?
Yeah. Oh. So definitely having all set in purpose. They do some research on this sea lion. They think that it has domoic acid poisoning, which can cause, some type of neurological damage. So, but the craziest part about this story, just kind of going back through and hashing back through it, is one would assume attacks a person, rabbit on the beach, chewing up lifeguard towers, like you put it down, right?
Yeah.
Euthanize it.
And then do some research on it.
So a little follow-up investigation here finds that they are actually treating the sea lion for domoic acid poisoning and hope to release it soon.
Nursing it back to health. Yes. Money well spent. The Humane Society have their hand in on that one? Or?
Only California. Only California.
Well, yeah, it was 2015 or 2016 when, due to ocean conditions and lack of forage fish and feed and the biomass decline and the warm water conditions, all that, you had all those sea lion pups that were starving. Yep. Mothers were having to travel hundreds of miles to find enough nutrition to come back and produce enough milk to feed their pups. And so man and human rights and animal rights activists intervened, and we had hundreds of pups scooped up off the beaches, taken to all these different facilities and shelters, nursed back to health to be released so they too could grow and become a fish killing machine, because we don't have enough of those in the ocean, right? So way to go, California.
Yeah, right. Because if we're seeing a decline in the population due to starvation or disease, the best thing we can do is prop it up, because obviously Mother Nature isn't trying to tell you something.
You're right. That was my thought exactly.
Oh my God.
I think they could have done better simply by taking this one, euthanize it, and do some research on it to make sure it was in fact acid, or why it was having some brain hemorrhage, or I'm sure they checked.
Unbelievable. But it's been interesting because we've covered so much in the last couple of weeks, the predators on land starting to have encounters with people, and now it's like this.
Well, now they're coming out of the water onto land and having encounters with people. So along with that, so last week we were having a little bit of technical issues getting Chris Donnelly on the phone, so we kind of dipped our toe into a story that had reared just that day, a couple hours prior to us going on air, with relative to sea lions. And Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and multiple tribes going through the process and submitting information to acquire federal permitting to up the ante, so to speak, on the California sea lions in the Columbia River, along with stellar sea lions. And so that one's been kind of boiling now for a week. What else has come of that?
Well, that permit they're applying for is going to be from Bonneville down through the river. So the lower...
To the mouth?
Yes, so lower, from what I can tell. And basically, I'm going to quote Cassina Lee here, the Region 5 director from WDFW. The vast majority of these animals remain in the coastal and offshore waters, but several hundred have established themselves in upriver locations, meaning probably below Bonneville. Salmon and steelhead numbers are low. Any unmanaged increase in predation can cause serious problems. I mean, that's something we know. And so we know with the Willamette Falls stuff, that, it helps. It works. It works. So she goes on to say, for decades, we've made stride in habitat restoration, hydropower policies, hatchery production, and fishery management, and we continue to work with our partners to further those initiatives, but predator management remains an essential part of the equation of saving salmon and steelhead. So, I mean, it's great that this is stuff that we didn't hear from the agency 4, 5, 6 years ago. Yep. So now we're beginning to hear it.
Yep.
So yeah, they're looking to starting. If you go back and kind of look what they've done, they've done this before. This isn't a new thing. This isn't the first time this has ever happened. But from 2008 to 2019, they actually removed 219 California sea lions from below Bonneville Dam. So this isn't the first time. I can't really tell by what I'm seeing exactly the number of sea lions they're hoping to remove in this one, but one would assume that it's going to be up in that range again, 200 to 300. Just to kind of give you guys kind of an idea of numbers. NOAA estimates now at this point that there's about 300,000 plus sea lions on the west coast from British Columbia to California.
Yep.
And WDFW estimates that there's 4,000 to 6,000 sea lions from Bonneville to Astoria. So, I mean, we're talking a massive predation.
Oh, huge.
I mean, huge. Yeah. I mean, you guys have all been down there during the buoy tin salmon season. It's just everywhere you look.
Yeah, if every one of those only needed 2 fish per day.
Right.
2 fish per day.
Right.
So 10,000 fish a day.
Right. And they eat more than that.
70,000 a week.
Right. I mean, we've seen that post in the past, the numbers that they eat. But, I mean, if we look at take 200 or 300 sea lions out of this, we're talking about, what, less than 1%?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very small number.
You do the math, Barnum. And I just said 2 fish a day.
Right.
Would you say 5,000 sea lions?
Yeah, let's say 5,000, right?
10,000 a day, 70,000 a week. The preseason forecast for our springers, folks, if you remember, was 99,000.
Right.
So within a week, 10 days, you could easily consume 100,000.
The entire run.
Yeah.
And I've seen numbers, I believe, put on by NOAA in the past that estimated up to 45% of the spring Chinook
2016
run.
or 17.
Yeah, was
45% of the spring Chinook run.
And that could
was
be something.
Eaten.
That could be, I mean, if you take the estimated numbers that were coming back this year, and what did we reach? 55%?
54%. Yeah.
Right, 54%. So if you consider 45% as as what the sea lions are going to take, 45 plus 55 is 100. Finally our fishery managers are seeing this and saying, yeah, we got to do something.
So what is a reasonable number that you leave living and residing in the Columbia River? Because
2.
Yeah, 2 males. I don't think back 20 years ago. What were the numbers? 30 years ago, how many California sea lions and stellar sea lions were in the main stem Columbia, upriver a couple miles out of the,
below a few hundred, I bet.
I would think so.
Right.
This has been a trait that they've learned and passed on.
Right.
And they've evolved. Within our lifetime, they've actually evolved into a different type of predator by means of going into the estuaries and beyond, way up into main stems and high up into the tributaries, and they're everywhere. Washington, Oregon, they're absolutely out of control. So,
and we've been fortunate enough on the Columbia River, especially that's kind of became a year-round fish-producing river, between the steelhead, the spring Chinook, the summer Chinook, the fall Chinook. I mean, the winter runs. I mean, it's just, so these sea lions have figured out, hey, we can go park at the dam, and it's just going to be a constant buffet swimming by.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then you got the stellar sea lions in there, which are a huge impact to the sturgeon numbers.
It's a huge impact, and talking to my fishing buddies that fish the sturgeon opener, I fish the sturgeon opener. I've been saying it for the last couple of years on that opener is we are not seeing the recruitment that we need as far as fish because you're not catching those juvenile fish at all.
No.
And I mean, in years past, it was kind of an even split between juvenile, keeper size, oversize. And I bet you when we finally get to see the numbers from this opener, you're going to see a bump to the oversize, and the juvenile is going to be way down. I mean, from talking to other fishermen and kind of what they encountered.
Yeah, they're being consumed.
Right. And so, I mean, I think what you're seeing happening is stress being put on by these stellar sea lions. The oversized sturgeon they're not spawning. They're just holding their eggs, and it's just not worth spawning.
Yeah.
So scary stuff.
Well, I'll be curious to see where this goes. You have again Washington, Oregon, Idaho, a number of tribes in all 3 states that are collectively submitting permitting applications to the feds in hopes of retaining those and being allowed to remove. Now, again, then it's all about what are the numbers that they're talking here, because I don't know where you stop. I'm still a little dismayed at the fact that when they enlisted or listed those California sea lions as protected under federal regulation in the Marine Mammal Protection Act, there was no scientist, marine biologist, whoever had the ultimate say to say what the threshold or the carrying capacity was. It's like if we get to 100,000, we feel like they have rebounded significantly, and we'll continue to monitor them at that point. If we get above that, we're going to have to intervene because they could offset the balance of the ecosystem relative to anadromous fish.
And I think that's just a deal of the time that it was happening in 1972 compared to recovery of species now. I mean, if you look at what Washington State has done with the wolf management plan and how they've set up parameters
you
for
want to talk
recovery.
About that today?
Well, we always do. But how they set up parameters for recovery and meeting certain goals, and that wasn't set in 1972 with the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And so here we are, you know what, 45 years later, 47 years later, and it's out of control. It's an amazing recovery story. Good job, you did it. Now let's manage it.
Let's back it down a little bit, knock it down a few notches. You proved your ability to succeed. There's a saying amongst many that once something is listed as endangered, they never come off the list. That is almost true. There's been a few, but it's very few. And this is one that is long overdue. Needs to happen. And then, of course, management in removal needs to get going. So
and I think we're seeing a step that way, especially with the Trump administration, much more willing to look at this and say, hey,
absolutely,
and listen to business and what we need as far as salmon recovery.
Well, the boys like to hunt. You know, so whatever the boys want. So there you go.
Hey, I'm all for a sea lion hunt.
Hey, so another thing going on that we told you we'd continue to follow relative to the Twins Harbor Fish and Wildlife Advocacy Group. They had another ruling or an update they've posted out. And again, if you want to follow this litigation, and I would suggest that you do, go to the Twin Harbors Fish and Wildlife Advocacy website and just type that in. It's going to pop right up. They're posting on a regular basis anytime they have movement on this thing they got going on with WDFW in this litigation. So a judge ruled discovery and video depositions can move forward for the advocacy legals challenges to WDFW co-management season setting practices. So as I read into this, and I'm going to read a couple of things here so I don't screw them up because I will. So the advocacy legal challenge to North of Falcon season setting process by WDFW. At the same time, they heard arguments regarding discovery and the advocacy's ability to use videotape in depositions of WDFW staff. WDFW argued that the videotape depositions of individual employees, and they highlight one of their folks here, were too hard on WDFW staff. They provided a declaration to the court explaining his concerns over the recent correspondence between WDFW and some attorneys in the legal ramifications. And it was stated in his testimony, I could be involved, if it was misconstrued or I'm involved in criminal activity, very offensive and threatening to me. So employees are feeling a sense of, I don't want to sit down and have to do a video deposition and have it reviewable, not only in the court setting, but for others who are feeling like they have access to that information. The court says they do have access to that information, and WDFW staff is going to sit down and have to give these depositions. This is a huge turn of events because nobody's ever gone after the department this hard. And I'm sure there are some very good reasons why WDFW doesn't want to put their personnel in that position. I mean, it's uncomfortable. Nobody knows what goes on behind those closed doors between the department and the tribal leaders and how they come to agreements on some of these fisheries that they set season on long before the North of Falcon process even begins. Some of these, there's those are in the camp strongly that a lot of these agreements are done and over with long before we ever get out to the public to give us our opportunity to be involved. So this is just transparency seeking. This is just a group that has finally had enough to say, we don't believe all the stuff going on, and we are going to push the letter of the law with our attorneys to butt heads with their attorneys, and we are going to get this into court, and they've been successful in doing so. And we have a judge here in Olympia. So far, if you look back at the updates going along, because again, it's all right there on their webpage, the judge has been pretty favorable for the advocacy to have access to this information, whereas if they just go in and ask WDFW point blank, you're going to get denied and say, no, you can't have that. That is not public information. Unfortunately for WDFW, at times the judge has now said, you can have this, you can have this. I'll be very curious to see where these depositions go and or who they call in and have them sit down and ask questions of.
That's going to be the interesting part.
Right?
I mean, I feel like right now you have a group of guys, the Twin Harbor Advocacy Group, that has this board made, and they have a single picture, and they have all these thread lines going to all these different people.
You're watching too much CSI.
Right, and they're working down this, and they're going to, I mean, they're going to get to the bottom of this. This is great.
Yeah.
No, this is great.
Well, it's, again, it's, you know, it's not like we got a bone to pick with WDFW. We got a lot of friends there.
Right.
But in this regard, legal matters and trying to get to the truth of things that have been difficult for years in trying to get factual information. The department has been, you know, held it very close to the vest. They've stood by this closed door policy. I told you, I've sat in the meetings where they had the State's Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General was there, and made it known that no, tribes do not have to fall under the Freedom of Information Act, and we've gone down all that road and have explained that to you guys. But this one, in my opinion, and I think you're on board, is getting beyond the roadblocks that other folks have never been able to penetrate.
Trying to bring transparency to that season-setting process, and we've all asked for it for years. You know, how are these decisions made? These guys are pushing the issue and going about it the legal way instead of, you know, pounding the table and pouting. And we're so far things look great.
I will say that years ago, maybe back in the early '80s, somebody may correct me here via the old text line here, but there were a number of meetings that would happen yearly where the tribe elders and their fish managers and folks would meet with WDFW, and there were committee folks that were invited to sit on those meetings. And something happened with the position and statements and posturing of some of the recreational folks that the tribes did not take too kindly. More so just kind of being rude and just, you know, not really representing the recreational community very well. And so those doors were closed and they haven't been open since.
Well, you can see that turning into a heated discussion at
absolutely.
times. I mean, you definitely could. I mean, and I understand kind of that point of it. I mean, if you think about it, if you put, you know, representatives from the recs, representatives from the commercials, representatives from WDFW, representatives from the tribe, all in the same round table trying to come to agreements. I mean, it's going to be brutal. But if that's what has to be done to keep everybody happy and make us feel like it's a fair process, then that's what has to be done. Who cares if it takes 2 weeks to make it happen?
If the number one goal for every entity involved was conservation, we would do a lot better and get a lot further. The problem is we want our fish. The tribes want their fish. WDFW wants to share allocation between rec and commercial.
And meat escapement.
Everybody has needs. And I'm greedy. I want my fish. But so does every other recreational angler. It's just the nature of the beast. If we could simply open those doors, everybody sits down and it's hey, this is all about conservation, and then we take what's left over and divide it up. The way it's supposed to work, like up in Alaska, rivers get a certain number of fish pass up through the markers before they open seasons. I mean, they have to get their fish returned before they go full on and just, you know, get after them. And then when not enough fish show up, they go, oh, hey, we got to close this now because we're not going to meet escapement. Here in Washington, Oregon, we do that. It's open, oh, wait, we're going to close it. Okay, now we can reopen. I mean, we've been doing that a lot the last 4 or 5 years. Whereas they used to set season, just let it go and monitor it, and now they do so much more in-season management based on decisions made at the table, and then either the fish do or don't show. Now we have these in-season adjustments. Now, when we have an abundance of fish showing and they predicted a shortfall, and all of a sudden we got wide open fishing, and they give us that, they say, hey, now we just bumped the limits to this. You can use this. You know, we're happy. But when the fish don't show and they got to close the doors, then we're pissed.
It's such a tough process, like you're saying, as the season going. I mean, on the Columbia River, you could see where that could work well with the dam counts and everything else. But on some of these smaller estuaries and smaller rivers, to keep track of it in season, I mean, oh man, what a tough job.
Real tough.
I mean, real tough. So, I mean,
Well, we'll see where that goes. The advocacy is not going away. The litigation continues, and play by play, week by week, there are potential updates depending. I mean, court proceedings take a long time, but hats off to those guys for being diligent, doing their homework, coming to the table with their attorneys and their information, and just fighting the battle. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, if they carry that flag, and ultimately the door gets shut on them because they hit that legal roadblock.
Right.
Hey man, no loss, no harm. They put up a fight to try and get the doors open and get us as much information as they can provide.
Right.
So, pretty cool. All right, with that, Barnum, in closing our what's going on around the Northwest and beyond, we have a little bit of an event happening this Saturday down at the El Waco Tuna Club.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but Saturday is Christmas. Christmas in June.
Christmas in June. Christmas
Salmon
in June.
season open.
This is true. June 22nd is the official opening day of salmon season. All 4 ocean areas open simultaneously. We have quotas set. We have opportunity. The fish are going to be there. And our part of this is an invite extended to us by the El Waco Tuna Club. And we are going to be down there. Setting up on Friday. The event kicks off Saturday around noon or 1 o'clock, social hour. It goes on all day. They have a number of seminars. They have, I believe, Coast Guard's there talking about bar crossing. They have, tricks and traits from different folks involved in the tuna industry. You're going to have Trey Finn there giving some type of a seminar. Okay. You got Dill Stevens talking electronics. They got a whole bunch of insightful information going. They got giveaways. They got a raffle going on. They provide a big dinner towards evening. You and I, my friend, and a handful of guests, and Chef Kelly and Sherry, we're all going to be down there, and we're kicking off our live show from the venue at 4:30. We're going to do about an hour and a half show. We're going to basically have this studio on the road, believe it or not, and bringing it to you live. And if you can't join us down there in Owaco, no worries. We're going to live stream it on both our platforms, YouTube and Facebook. Right, Blake? Yeah, as long as we can get it all up and going.
So you get 2 times the Fish Hunt Northwest.
2 times the Fish Hunt Northwest. It's been a lot of work to get this off the ground. We're really happy and hoping that it all comes together. We can bring it to you without any technical glitches. If it all comes up on Friday when we're doing our tests, we may even throw a little test run out there on Friday late afternoon, early evening, just to make sure we're connecting and the sound quality and everything is good. Keep in mind, this will be in front of several hundred people attending the event, watching the show, eating their dinner. We're going to interview guys like Aaron Walker from Battlefish.
I'm excited for that one.
Isn't that going to be good?
Yeah.
That is going to be pretty fantastic.
Right, you guys prep for that. Go to Netflix, download the episodes of Battlefish and watch that. That was filmed in Westport and Owaco.
Yep.
And it kind of looks at the commercial albacore season that goes on off the coast of Washington, and it is, what an awesome show.
Oh, it's fantastic because it depicts, these recreational guys going up against the commercial guys, so to speak, and kind of on the premise of deadliest catch. They're keeping totals and who's bringing in the money, and it's a great concept. Aaron and his guys have the 4 of them sharing ownership on that boat, and they're running 300 Suzukis on the back of that bad boy, and just flat out getting with it. Get out, get their fish, turn around, come back. They're in and out every day.
Yeah, the industry is kind of changing in that aspect, that you're seeing more of this move towards smaller, faster boats with technology building, and I mean, honestly, it's a better quality, fresher fish. So, you see where that could be productive.
It's not the deep freeze for 12 days, then you come in and offload. It's fresh daily. They bring in fresh albacore daily.
You're talking about tuna that you could be picking up at the dock that's just a few hours old.
Yeah.
That's
4
crazy.
guys on a boat, and when they haul in 100+ fish on their daily catch, it's pretty impressive. And the more they start using the jack pulls, the more it gets pretty interesting.
That's one of the things I've always wanted to do. I've been out tuna fishing now 3 or 4 times, and it is fantastic fun. But one thing I've always wanted to do is jack pull.
Yeah.
And so I got to figure out how to make that happen.
In public, by the way. So, but it's going to be a great time down there. There's a lot of very good information coming out of there. Like I said, giveaways. The dinner is going to be fantastic. If you are down in that Westport, Owaco, Long Beach area, Astoria, you know what? Come on over there to Owaco and take a stroll through the tent, buy your raffle tickets, get your dinner ticket, sit down at 4:30, join us on the show. Let us know here on our Facebook or YouTube, if you're going to make it down there, give us a shout out and we'll look for you. Or come up and say hi. We're going to have tons of swag we're selling, sweatshirts, t-shirts. I'm hoping the hats come in tomorrow. They're supposed to, right? Okay. So great logo on our hat with the new patches and stuff. You guys are going to love them. So we're going to have the tables down there. Again, Chef Kelly's doing a phenomenal tuna recipe right there. Live on the show,
right?
As we do each and every week. So
come down, laugh at us when we screw up, throw tomatoes at us.
Because we're going to screw up. We're going to be live in front of people and trying to simulcast this, stream it out live, the whole deal on a venue. It's going to be a blast. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I think you and I should probably get full on drunk before we do this because we'll present so much better.
We'll make sure we got a good buzz going.
Okay, enough of that. We are kind of at that time where we got to jump out for a break. When we come back, we have a very special guest, Anel Shrivastava. I told you I was going to butcher it, right?
That wasn't even close.
I'm thinking about it too hard. Anel Shrivastava, owner of Puget Sound Fly Company, is going to be sitting in this chair, and we are going to talk a ton of things relative to fly fishing with him. Don't go shutting off your TV or your handheld device because this information is compelling. If you want to get out on the lakes and start walking down that road of fly fishing and start, putting that bug rod in your hand, Anel's going to set you straight. We got multiple topics to cover with him, and it's going to be very good information. So don't go anywhere. We're going to jump out for a quick break, and we'll be right back.
At metal supermarkets, we understand your need for fast access to a wide variety of metals, so we've made it easy. Our network of stores carries a wide variety of metal in all different types, shapes, sizes, and grades, with no required minimum order size. Who could ask for more? Simply tell us your dimensions online, on the phone, or in store, and we'll cut or process the metal to your desired size, often while you wait. We offer same-day service and can deliver the metal right to your door or job site. We even source hard-to-find metals, so no matter what you're looking for, metal supermarkets can provide it for you. And we're conveniently located with brick-and-mortar stores in Seattle and Portland, so you can check out our extensive stock for yourself. Superior customer service is guaranteed. Quality service from real people who know metal. We are the small quantity metal experts. To place an order, simply call a store to talk to one of our knowledgeable customer service representatives. Fill out a quote request online, order off of our e-commerce website, or visit one of our many locations and pick out the metal you want. Whether you're a small or large business, government, homeowner, or hobbyist, we make it easy for you to buy the exact metal and just the amount you need. We've been doing this for over 30 years, so we know how to get it done. Metal Supermarkets, the convenience stores for metal. Visit or call a metal supermarket store near you today.
Hey, welcome back to Fish on Northwest. Wayne England, Kelly Barnum, and our very special guest, Anil Srivastava.
There you go.
Third time's a charm. Company. I just don't think about it.
There you go.
See, if I just don't think about it, it just rolls off like I almost, I've known you for 30 years. So, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thanks for making the drive down or the ride down with David. I apologize about that. You just got to spend time in the car with IT. I'm sure he was probably making you drive and he was playing some game on his phone.
Oh, yeah. Or he was telling you how the basics of the stereo and how it works.
I need all the help I can get.
There you go. So you have been, originally partner in Puget Sound Fly Company.
Yeah.
I believe you told me 2003.
Yeah, partner.
And now you're sole owner, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So you guys been saying you moved one time.
We moved one time. We
Yeah.
were up in the SeaTac kind of Kent. Technically it was Kent, but everybody thinks it's Federal Way up there on 99. Okay. Now we're down there and off Tacoma Mall Boulevard.
Okay. All right. What would be a store or something next to you that?
So we're due north of the Castle store.
Oh, the Castle.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm surprised you know that one.
Yeah. Ron told me about it. They sell rods too, apparently.
They do.
But anyway, I'd go with the two-handed.
They got a huge selection. You can check them out.
So what is? What's your number? Let's see. How do I put it? What's your number one seller as far as fly? Is it in the trout industry? Would it be for spiny ray or warm water species? Would it be steelhead or salmon? Is there a crossover? What do most people come in seeking?
As you guys know, one of the great things about Washington is we have this huge variety.
Right.
Yep.
We really do. It may not all be world class, but some of it is, and even the stuff that isn't, hey, at least you can go. It may not be as good at bass fishing as you have in the South, but we got good bass fishing.
Right.
Sometimes great bass fishing, And same thing, salmon and steelhead, sure. Sometimes, obviously, Alaska's got bigger numbers of fish, at least salmon-wise, but we have them here, So that's the great thing. We have people doing trout. Obviously we sell probably more trout stuff than anything, but we sell a lot of salmon and steelhead stuff. We sell a lot of sea run, cutthroat, local saltwater stuff. We do a lot of destination saltwater. So it's pretty cool. It's seasonal to some degree. We do more of one thing at certain times of the year, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's nice. We get a big variety, and it's cool too because you have to be on your toes and know a lot about a lot of different things.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Right. So as a beginner coming in there, so I'm not a fly fisher. As a beginner, I come into your store. I want to get started. Where are you going to point me as far as what's the easiest fishery to get involved in, and what's an average I'm going to spend to get started? Because I think we have, and of course a lot of it's going to depend on the budget, but what can somebody get started for that's not going to completely break the bank if they were starting from scratch? This
is a great time of year to get started just because you don't have to get into waders. Somebody comes to me and wants to go winter steelheading.
Yeah.
You're going to add waders to that bill, right? You're not wet wading. Good luck to you. But this time of year, if you want to get a small fly rod, like a little 7'3" weight or something like that, and go get a floating line and some dry flies and go creek fishing, you don't need anything. You get a pair of sandals, a fly box, some leaders and stuff like that, and you got a lake right out here. The one barrier to lake fishing, and other than this, it's real simple. I always tell people, look, you're in Western Washington. It's either surrounded by trees because it hasn't been developed, which fly casting's pretty darn hard, or it's surrounded by people that thought the lake was prettier than you did or earlier than you did and bought houses. Right? And so
which one am I?
you need some kind of a boat.
Right.
And you don't need a fancy boat. You need a float tube, a canoe, a car topper, anything to get you away from the shore. But if you have that, or you have a dock, or you have access, then it's real simple. Fish and Wildlife does a good job of stocking most of these lakes. There's a lot of native fish. There's a lot of wild non-native fish. There's opportunity from bluegill and pumpkin seed, all sorts of other things. Trout, bass, all this stuff. We
actually have a pretty decent native cutthroat fishery that's rebounding here on this lake, which is pretty exciting. And then the stalker rainbows fly is fantastic. I catch a ton of them off my dock with my fly rod. And I just picked it up as something extra to do because I can stand on my dock, I got nothing behind me. I can practice my bastardized casting and get it done. But it's a kick in the pants. I got a little 5 weight, I might think about going lighter, but What is, let's talk about that introduction into it. If I'm going to do the lake thing, whether I have a small car topper or a drift boat even, I want to take a drift boat out, which is nice because it's a stable platform to stand in.
Great platform for fishing the lakes. Great platform. And a lot of guys already have them for doing other things. Might as well get out and use it.
Well, with the way some of our other fisheries are going, there's a lot of drift boats parked in driveways all over. I'm thinking, hey, you know what? You got the drift boat. Put a little electric troll on there if you want to cover some ground. Or, I can run up to an 8-horse kicker on my boat and run that thing down the other end of the lake in no time. But you got a stable platform. You get out away from the shoreline. And so I want to predominantly go after rainbows and cutties and things in lakes. So 4-weight, 5-weight, what's the length of that rod? Type of reel should I think about putting on there?
Yeah, so it's a real common one. And when guys come into the shop, a lot of times they want to start fly fishing, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What do you want to fish for, right? Just like you would if you're going to any tackle shop. I need a fishing rod. They're going to go, well, what are you fishing for, right? And a lot of times people are unrealistic. They're like, well, I kind of want to catch bluegill and Chinook. And you're like,
okay, did you say you want to catch bluegill with Chinook, or you want to catch Chinook with bluegill?
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, and if they, and again, probably because they just thought, hey, I've got these kind of salmon drifting rods and all this kind of stuff. Well, now I need a fly rod. And it's like, well, a fly rod's like a bow, right? Like it's just a different type of equipment. You don't get a fishing rod to go fishing. You need different fishing rods for different things. Right. But the nice thing is, just like fishing rods, conventional rods, you can do a lot with some rods that, particularly if the fish are about the same size, you can do a lot with the same equipment. So I always go, okay, what are you hoping to do? And a lot of times we can get it, but typically they're going to be with a 9-foot 5-weight. That's your bread and butter all around trout rod. And on a lake, you don't want to go shorter. I talked earlier about getting a little creek rod. Obviously it's brushy, you're not casting very far, you want something shorter and lighter. In a lake, distance becomes a bit of an issue. And with a fly rod, you're slinging this string, the fly line back and forth. If you want to cast it farther, it has to be higher up off the water, because otherwise eventually it starts taking the water. So a lot of people, particularly if you're going to be in a float tube or a canoe or something like that where you're sitting down, you got a pretty different angle of attack when you're sitting on top of the water or slightly in the water versus standing 1.5 feet above the water on the deck of a bass boat.
Absolutely.
Those are two different positions. So a lot of guys in float tubes like longer rods, and understandably so they can reach out a little bit better. When you're standing up on the front of a boat, you're contending with the wind. Maybe a 9-foot rod or even a slightly shorter rod is better, because you can already get it out there. You're already a raised platform, but now you're exposed to the wind a little bit more. Most of those guys prefer a little bit shorter rod. Okay. But a typical rod like this is a 9-foot 5-weight. And you asked me to bring this in just to give people an idea. It's really not that intimidating. So if you know how to fish at all, you're like, I know where there's some fish, I'd like to try doing some fly fishing. You can get a combo like this at a shop like ours or most places. This is $169.
For the combo?
For the whole thing. It's rod, reel, line. It's even got a leader on there.
Wow.
And anymore, this is a good beginner's outfit. If you try to go too cheap and you try to get something $100 or around there or less, you're running the risk of getting at least one or two of the things being pretty subpar. The real, just flat out almost doesn't work. But if we sell stuff, we sell good stuff, but you can find this stuff anywhere. I mean, even the big shops like Bass Pro and Cabela's, a lot of people will come in, oh, I bought this, I want to get, they're a little sheepish about it. Like, it's good stuff, if you spend enough money, you can get decent stuff. And it doesn't have to be great, but it has to be good, otherwise you're not gonna be able to learn on it.
You'll be frustrated.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Yep. You guys provide lessons and casting lessons?
We do casting lessons. We do a lot of private instruction. Because casting is really the thing about fly fishing that makes it the most different. You got to learn to fly cast in order to deliver your lure, your fly, to the fish. I mean, that's the thing that everybody goes, well, that looks like a lot of fun, but could I do it? Can I do it? Do I have the room to do it? And there are casts and techniques you can use with very limited room behind you, but you're probably not going to do that until you have some proficiency and you understand that.
Practice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like archery, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, it's one of those things you got to put in some extra work.
Yeah.
It's not just picking up a spinning rod or whatever and throwing it out there, right? So let's talk a little bit about this time of year. my approach to the lake. Am I thinking, well, I go dry flies? I mean, those float on top of the water, right?
Sure.
And or do I use something with a little barrel head on the front of it? A very, very micro-sized fly that does sink, albeit slow. What about some type of a fashioned, section of sink tip on there? What does that do for me? So let's dispel the differences between dry presentation and sinking presentation, how I can do that.
Sure. So this is real typical. When you get any beginner's combo, it's got a floating line on it. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason for that is it's the best line for some situations, and it's not for everyone, but you can use it anytime. Mm-hmm. And the reason is if you had a sinking line like you might use in the lake sometimes, it might be the most productive thing you use. It'd be pretty much useless for most of the river fishing you're going to do, and a lot of times it would sink too fast.
Right.
So you're flat out not fishing in those scenarios. So they give you the one that you can use anytime.
Right.
And you can fish a decent depth subsurface, at least about 5 to 10 feet down with a floating line, with the right techniques and flies and added weight and stuff like that. Or you can put most of these floating lines have loops on the front of them. You can put a little sink tip on like you were talking about.
Right.
Dedicated lake fishermen have more fly lines than probably anybody else, and it's because you got to use a different line to really achieve the depth. And that's for most river fishing. If you talk to somebody that was a hardcore trout river fisherman, they're probably going to have a sink tip or two. But if you asked them, I bet you 90% they're using a floating line.
Yeah.
So for somebody getting into it, like, you probably don't need anything other than that. Lake fishing, you can do a lot with the floating line. The first bit of gear that you're probably going to start acquiring is just different sinking lines, just to hit those different depths. Okay. And again, just like anything else, right? If you're really into it, you're going to have 5 of them. No. If you're getting into it, you might have 2.
Right.
A floating line and a sinking line. Right. And maybe the first one you get is kind of a medium sinking line, and then you're like, oh, geez. We're fishermen, right?
I want to go deeper.
You're out there, and there's that one guy or gal over there that's, they're hooked up again.
Yeah.
They're hooked up again. And you're like, well, what are they doing? Oh, he's got that fast sinking line. And of course, the last thing, it doesn't matter how much it costs or what kind of a pain in the butt it is, you need that piece of equipment because you want to catch fish all the time, every day. That's the way we are.
What if I'm coming into your shop and I've been struggling, and it's like, I got all these different flies I'm throwing, the trout don't seem to want to go after any of them. This time of year, we're transitioning right now into full-on, summer. In summer, and so we're going to get into summer. It's going to get even hotter, drier. Lake temperatures are warming up even more. Those fish are going to go a little deeper. But what are some flies or presentations that I should have in my arsenal to actually get these things to bite?
Yeah, and even people that don't fly fish know what I'm about to tell you, which is, go out late in the evening. Everybody, that's part of the reason a lot of people start to fly fish. They're standing on a lake somewhere or they're fishing and they go, look at all these fish eating bugs.
Right.
If I had something that looked like that bug, I'd be catching a bunch of these fish. And that's probably, again, for a lot of people, they get some thinking about it. So obviously that's one that you can do, particularly this time of year, early in the morning, late in the evening, into dark. And then, I like the most simple pattern you can throw, because again, now you start talking about matching that. Well, what's a mayfly? What's a caddis? How do I fish it? All that stuff. Before you have to get in any of that, there's flies called soft hackles. You should be able to buy them at any fly shop. Use about a size 14 or 16, which is about a 1/4 inch long. And even if you don't know what's happening out there, for most of our local lakes, if you cast that out and just strip it through those rising fish, or even slow troll it with oars or electric motor going real slow, you'll pick up most of those fish.
They snap at those pretty good.
Yeah, it's just kind of a generic imitation. And if the fish are real smart and sophisticated in some places, it's not going to work, but that's not what we have here. We don't have fish that see 20 flies a day and have to, you know what I mean? Like, these fish see 1 or 2 and they,
It's surprising on these stalker rainbow how surface active they get in the mornings and evenings. They've been raised in a hatchery, but they're in the lake for a month or 2, and there's days, evenings out here, this lake's just absolutely boiling.
Then if you think about it, somebody explained that to me a long time ago. Yeah, they're raised in a hatchery. They haven't seen a real bug their entire life, but every bit of their food came from up there.
Right. Well, you think about when we were in Twin Lakes, I mean, the amount of the triploids that were boiling in the evenings. Like, gee, in fact, you pulled the fly rod out a few times and gave it a whirl.
Yeah, I did. Well, good stuff. I mean, as far as folks that are intrigued enough to want to give it a go. And I suggest you do. I'm a bait thug from way back, and I love fishing everything bait. But I'll tell you what, there is so much fun and enjoyment taking a lightweight fly rod and just catching fish after fish and throwing a pattern out there and off of my dock. When I bring in a rainbow, a cutty, a smallmouth, and a perch, all with the same exact fly, I'm like, this is almost too easy at times, right? They all got to eat, so it becomes the challenge of what can I throw out here that they're not going to hit, right? So my experience, and limited as it is, being here on the lake 4 years now, but it's hard to beat anything that's black or brown. Especially early spring, so all through spring, when the water's up a little bit, cooler temperature, I can put something on brown, once in a while a little olive pattern of something, woolly buggers and stuff like that, but they're just pretty much standard go-tos that seem to flat out produce.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one to try this fall, try burnt orange.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny, if you think about it, like, again, these animals that they're eating have to blend in with the foliage, right? So everything starts to die, and I'm telling you, you use burnt orange in the fall, and it works really well.
Yeah, and think about that, transition on the leaves and transition on your color presentation. So, all right, and now, don't go anywhere. We're going to jump out for a break, and we got more segments to do with you. Got to pick your brain on some other interesting items. See you on Cutthroat, to be more specific, is going to be a good conversation later on the show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We're going to jump out for a break. We come back, we're going to do recipe of the week, I believe is what I'm looking at. Yeah, recipe of the week with Chef Kelly and Sherry. They got something going on with some sea bass. Don't call them sea bass,
Yeah, don't call them sea bass. They're rockfish.
They're rockfish or black bass or sea bass. Kiss my sea bass. Kick his
You decide what you want to call them.
You decide what you want to call them.
They're bottom fish and they taste fantastic.
They're really good. Of course, I'm sure the recipe is going to be amazing. So we'll jump out for a quick commercial break. We come back. You're going to be in the kitchen with Chef Kelly and Sherry, and we'll get you after that. Stay tuned.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Fish Hunt Northwest. We're here in the kitchen for the recipe of the week and kicking some sea bass.
Yeah. Okay, I get you. So yeah, we're gonna cook some sea bass up. You know, it's sea bass season. You know, we're gonna have some on hand. So we're gonna do some steamed sea bass with steamed with a Chinese black bean sauce and a jade pesto rice.
I didn't know there were Chinese black beans.
Yes, and you know, I have them here.
Okay.
So here they are here.
They look pretty appetizing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're salted, they're fermented.
Oh, you can see the salt right on them.
Oh yeah. So you have to rinse them, or else they're going to be way too salty. I mean, there's no way around it.
Okay.
Okay. So I already rinsed these guys, and then I kind of coarsely chopped them up.
So they're almost like a paste.
You know, kind of coarse.
You know.
So there you go.
Okay.
Okay. So, but first we're going to deal with our sea bass, and so this is just a regular old, steamer basket. I call it the UFO. Pretty much everybody probably has one of these. And I sliced up some daikon, but you could use some potato. Daikon's a Chinese radish.
Radish.
Yeah. Or Japanese radish, actually.
How did they start out?
Oh, they could be big. I mean, they could be, like that big around.
So you just peeled it?
So I just peeled it. I sliced it really thin. I just wanted something else. I was making some kimchi, so I was like, oh, I'll save that piece for steaming.
See. Okay.
Okay. So no seasoning. Make sure.
Because of the salt.
The salt level already here. We don't want to take it over top.
All right.
Okay. If you wanted to, you can. Chinese love white pepper. So if you want to put a little white pepper on there, absolutely go do that.
All right.
Okay. So that's steaming away. We'll actually switch it to the back. Okay.
Pan warm.
Okay. Now we're going to work on our Chinese black bean sauce.
Okay.
Okay. So let's start with our black beans.
Load up the pan.
Okay. A little bit of ginger, probably like about a teaspoon. Let's do like a tablespoon of garlic. Okay. I'll be nice to you this time.
Be a little bit nice.
Okay.
Yes.
I also have some Szechuan peppercorn. This is optional. This is what it is there. It's the prickly ash. Everybody thinks it's true peppercorn. It's not. This is a very traditional Chinese ingredient.
Red pepper.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very traditional, and some people will eat this and go, "Wow, why does my tongue feel numb?" That's that feeling that it is that. I know it doesn't really sell the thing, but it's it's just a very traditional spice, and it's you just use it sparingly.
Can't feel your tongue when you're chewing.
Not like that. Just like kind of weird, kind of different,
just a different kind of feeling. Yeah.
So I took that and I just put it in the spice grinder, ground it up fine. You do not want it. You don't really want to put these whole. They're not very appealing to get a whole one in your mouth.
Okay.
Sometimes you have maybe whole peppercorns. That's okay. I can deal with it. Mm-hmm. Not that. Okay. You need to either pull them out. Some people will saute them in a little oil and then pull them out and just use the oil, or they grind them up. So either one of those techniques is good.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah.
We need just a little bit more oil. And our fish is steaming away.
All right.
Okay. So
saute that up.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay, our garlic is fragrant now.
Yeah, you can smell it.
Right?
That's for sure.
We're going to add just a teaspoon of sesame oil, a teaspoon of soy sauce.
Probably not too heavy on that with the sodium.
Because we're already a little heavy on our salt already from the black beans. Shaoxing. Yeah. A little bit of green onions, a little bit of, like about a tablespoon of each. Okay. I'm going to add a little touch of water to kind of bring this together. So our sauce is going to take like a couple minutes to come together here. Our fish is almost there.
All right.
So
we have a little while, or?
Yeah, we have a little while.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and shoot it back to you guys in the studio.
Hey, welcome back to Fish Hunt Northwest in the studio. Anyway, it looks like Chef has thrown us a bit of a curve. We got a two-part series tonight. They did a little prep on that sea bass. black bass, rockfish, whatever. I don't give a crap what you call it. It's good.
Right. And they're fun to catch.
And they're fun to catch. We were talking about that with Annelle at the break, that different methods to go after those sea bass is just, it's a kick in the pants. I don't care how you do it, light spinning rod or whatever. Good time. That would be an ocean fish, Barnum.
Yep.
And we got an opportunity to get out on the ocean this weekend with the opening of salmon season. It crosses over. We got some halibut opportunity.
Yeah.
You got lingcod opportunity. You got some sea bass opportunity. So what's our Saturday weather looking like? We're going to be down there in the Waco area. We've got an invite to maybe go out if the weather looks okay. So I might want to take advantage of that.
Right. Well, let's dig into that. Let's just go right to it. Let's go straight to the marine zone forecast. I got it set up today, again, just because that's kind of my home waters when I head out. I'm set up kind of 10 nautical miles off of the Westport area. What you're looking at is, let's kind of start at Friday. Friday, 5 to 15, wind waves 1 to 2 feet, west swell 7 feet at 9 seconds. So, combined seas of 8 to 9 feet. Not real fun for tomorrow.
Doesn't look too good to me.
No, the wind actually picks up Friday night and goes 15 to 20 knots, but the swell begins to start to decrease a little bit. It goes 6 feet at 8 seconds. So when we go into Saturday, you're going to have, for the salmon opener, northwest winds 5 to 15 knots becoming 10 to 20 in the afternoon, wind waves 1 to 3, 5 feet at 8 seconds on the swell. So again, you're going to be a 6 to 8 foot combined sea. You're going to have to work at it. That's going to be a little snotty. I mean, not horrible. A lot of guys will fish that. I'd probably stay home on that just because I like to have an enjoyable time on the ocean and not puke my guts out.
Right. Yeah, me too.
And then Sunday, you're looking at, northwest wind 10 to 20 as that onshore flow continues through the week. And I think that's going to be kind of a theme through the weekend. You're going to keep the onshore flow. You're going to see the swell right around 5 or 6 feet. And then as we get into the first part of next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's looking like that wind's going to die down. And you're going to start to see your swell decrease, 5 foot on Monday, 4 foot on Tuesday. So the first part of the week looks like it's going to be fairly good fishing, and maybe give some guys a chance to get maybe even a little farther offshore and start looking around for some tuna.
Yeah.
Let's kind of look at the tides. I pull up the tides for the Columbia River entrance just so we, as you're making plans for the weekend, if you are deciding to go out and brave those conditions, then you can look at your ebbs and your floods. Saturday, your high water is going to be at 4 a.m. Your low water is going to be at 10:49. It's a 6.5 dropping to a 0.1. So 6.4 feet of water movement. You can expect that max ebb is going to be right around probably 5 a.m. So, that's a fairly decent amount of water movement, 6 feet, 5 a.m. max ebb. The bar crossing first thing in the morning on Saturday could be a little kicked up.
Sure.
So especially if we have that 5 to 15 knot wind blowing in. So keep that in mind. And then Sunday, it's a little smaller tide. They move up about 45 minutes, as some of you may know. High water 4:48, low water 11:25. Your max ebb's probably going to be around 6 o'clock. So like I said, keep that in mind for your bar crossings. It's, Coast Guard almost always advises to avoid crossing any bar at that max ebb.
Right.
So kind of keep that in mind as you guys try to plan for the weekend.
Okay. Well, we're going to be down there in Waco Saturday. If we could squeeze in a little fishing, we'll see. But we got a lot going on down there. We may still be getting set up for the show later in the day, and want to make sure that event is successful and have a good time.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got tons more to get through before we call it quits here this evening. So we're going to jump out for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do a follow-up on something we initiated last week. We're going to get on the phone again with Chris Donnelly, the Region 1 Fisheries Manager for WDFW, and we're going to talk about this northern pike issue. I believe he coined it as term crisis.
Right.
Is what is unfolding over there that gives him grave concern, along with other fishery managers and biologists for that region and beyond. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about, or quite extensively, in fact, to educate you all to get the word out on this northern pike. And we're also going to find out what's going on with the kokanee as of late, as that is a destination kokanee fishery that if you've ever taken part of, you definitely want to be able to go back. But it ebbs and flows like kokanee do. They're cyclid. So we'll see what's happening with that status of that kokanee fishery this time of year, and we'll definitely find out some information on this northern pike. So stay tuned, jump out for a quick break, and we'll be right back after this. Hey everybody, welcome back, Fish on Northwest. We are anchoring it up here in studio this evening.
Right.
Just lots to talk about, lots of things to cover. Not going to bring you a bait lab segment tonight. That's probably one of the first times we haven't jumped in the old bait lab.
First time we haven't done the bait lab.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, well,
In
busy
honor of
week.
the fly fisherman?
Huh?
You didn't want to do that in front of the fly fisherman?
Yeah, we don't want to show you the bait lab.
We don't do that.
You might see things in there that might make you vomit.
Yeah. So we didn't want to offend you. You know,
So
you're one of those guys.
Yeah, one of those guys, yeah. No, that's not the reason. We just got plenty to talk about with you sitting right here in the seat. So I appreciate you coming in. So as we mentioned before the break, we are jumping back on the phone with our buddy Chris Donnelly, the Region 1 Fish Manager over on the east side of the state, if you don't know where Region 1 is, and talking a little bit more about Lake Roosevelt, some things going on there. How you doing tonight, Chris?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Hey, thanks for taking the time and sticking it out with us again here on FHN. You left us kind of hanging last week when I mentioned northern pike, and the cliffhanger was crisis. So
yeah, I mean, I had nightmares all week.
Yeah, Barnum actually had to get counseling because of this
Yes.
northern pike issue going on.
Yes.
So on a serious note, let's talk about the evolution of this northern pike deal within Lake Roosevelt. When do you think it actually kind of started? Was it a bucket biology brigade that got him in there? And to what level of concern is it truly at this point?
Well, so for us, I guess it starts in the early 2000s in the Ponderay River, and that is a tributary to Lake Roosevelt.
Right.
comes in out of Ponderay Lake. And so the original population of northern pike that we had established in Washington started in Ponderay, and we've been working with the Kalispell tribe for at least 6 or 7 years to suppress that population in Ponderay with the hopes that we were going to keep it out of Lake Roosevelt altogether.
Right.
Unfortunately, we had a couple big year classes, and they squirted out past our suppression efforts and got established in Roosevelt. And so now we're doing the same thing in conjunction with the Spokanes and the Colville tribe and Lake Roosevelt, and trying to keep them suppressed in that reservoir, with the hopes of keeping them out of the anadromous zone, or for a better term, the places where salmon and steelhead exist in the Columbia.
Right.
Sure.
Right. So if they get out of that reservoir and drop down into the next lower reservoir, does that become like full-on crisis mode at that point for you guys?
I think it's fair enough to say that we're there now, but
Okay.
yes, once they get into the salmon and steelhead world, and you start to think about all the challenges we have now with sea lions and bird predation and hydropower impacts and agriculture and human encroachment and, all the things we do even as anglers. And then we add on pike. I don't know where it stops. And,
Right.
and that's the concern, is there's an awful lot of pike habitat in the Hanford Reach and in those reservoirs above Wenatchee. And then, of course, you go down to the John D. Pool and the thing screams pike habitat.
Yeah. What are some of the preventative measures that you guys have deployed? What did you do on the Ponderay, and now what have you been doing on Roosevelt as this evolves?
The most successful thing we've found is gill nets. They're not 100%, contrary to some popular belief. They don't kill everything that swims, but they're pretty effective. And pike are, big teeth and big wide gill plates, and so they stick into a gill net pretty well. And that's been our most successful measure. And if you look at the Ponderay River, when we started into suppression, we were at about 14 fish per gill net that we set in the river. As of this spring, we're at somewhere less than a half a fish per gill net. So you can be successful with gill nets in suppressing those populations almost down to undetectable levels.
Wow.
Oh, wow. What when you're actually targeting pike, Chris, what area do you focus in on? What type of structure are you looking for? Is it a deep set? Is it a shallow area near off a shoreline, off an outcropping, rocky? I mean, where are they setting these gill nets that they predominantly are getting the northern pike? And what else are they actually pulling out from time to time?
Yeah, fair question. So we target the shallow areas, and what we're trying to do is target them pre-spawn. The thing that's unique about Lake Roosevelt is pre-spawn for pike in Lake Roosevelt probably starts in February and carries through till full pool somewhere in the end of June some years. And the trick with pike, and the reason that we thought we could stop them at the Ponderay River and not likely see reproduction in Lake Roosevelt is it's a big bathtub, right? They draw it down 60, 80 feet a year. There's no vegetation for those pike to spawn on. They like emergent vegetation to spawn on. So we thought, well, they're typically a March spawner, sometimes an April spawner. The reservoir's way drawn down. They're not going to spawn, and therefore we won't have this issue. Well, what we found out is they'll wait till June. They find some grasses that grew, and then they go into these shallow areas and spawn in June and late May. And so to get a roundabout way of answering your question is we net them in shallow water.
Okay.
Having said that, we also bycatch trout, we bycatch walleye, we bycatch smallmouth bass, we bycatch any other fish that swims, and our goal is to avoid that.
Right.
We're not out to extirpate walleye. We're not out to extirpate smallmouth bass. We're simply there to get rid of the pike. And sort of you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet scenario. But unfortunately, sometimes bycatch gets a little high. Although the good part is there's an awful lot of walleye and smallmouth bass in the reservoir, and so it can afford a little bit of exploitation and still not affect it.
All right, I got kind of a two-part question for you here. You talk about the spawn. How many eggs are a northern pike female laying? What's the survivability of that? And then on top of that, an average pike, let's say a year old, 2 years old, what do you think the quantity of bait fish they're eating a day is, or do you guys have that information?
So to the spawning question first,
okay.
We're talking about tens of thousands of eggs in a mature female, and maybe up to a half a million, in a big female.
Wow.
So lots of eggs per female, and that's the risk. And then as far as overall, exactly what they eat or, consumption over a 24-hour period, we've never calculated that, but it's not uncommon for us to see a dozen, 2 dozen salmonids in the gut of a large pike.
Wow.
That's concerning.
Yes.
Yeah. When your numbers get a little high, reference to your bycatch, have you had any weeks out there where it's given you kind of to take pause because you're getting too many red band or larger red band, those wild rainbow that are in there, or is that not an issue and it's more beneficial to get those pike out?
No, a good question. And we just know where those red bands occur seasonally, and we're very conscious of not putting those gill nets in where we think we're going to come across those big concentrations of red bands.
Yeah.
Those things are almost irreplaceable from the perspective that, there isn't altogether that many of them in the reservoir, relatively speaking. And then we don't want to kill thousands of those because it'd be very difficult to come back from that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the efforts continue. I think you had mentioned to me in one conversation previously, Chris, that obviously money is the driver behind success or failure on this program. And at times amongst you and the tribal communities that are working with WDFW to mitigate this, money becomes an issue. How much money do you think it is required out of your budget annually to be successful in ridding Roosevelt of the northern pike?
Yeah, so we put in for a proposal with the Bonneville Power Administration that's responsible for mitigation up there. And the proposal was for roughly $800,000 a year, which we thought would lead us to give us a pretty good shot at suppressing that pike population, hopefully preventing them from getting through Grand Coulee and over Chief Joe and then into the Anadromous zone. At this point, we haven't been able to secure that funding through Bonneville. Lots of funding requests come in, and it's tough to fund everything. And so we're just grabbing money, catch as catch can, from surpluses as we find it. And we've had up to $100,000 for fish and wildlife money that we've spent. The tribes have had up to $250,000. But we're all getting pretty close to where we're out of money.
Yeah.
The problem's still growing. We haven't got our arms around it in Lake Roosevelt, and I think that's the crisis part of this, is the problem's growing. We're running out of money. We have a pretty good idea how to do it, but we don't have enough money to implement it, and so it's just, it's growing legs on us, and we're trying to keep it down, but it's been difficult.
What can the recreational community do to assist WDFW in ridding Roosevelt of the northern pike issue?
Don't let any of them go. If you go up there and catch them, don't let them go. The Colville tribe has a bounty program. There's freezers at almost all of the access areas. turn the head in, put your name on it, and get $10.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to mess around with that, just kill them.
Yeah.
They're a prohibited species in the state of Washington. You're not required to harvest them. There is no game wastage rule around them.
There's no limit.
By all means, love them to death and do not trample them.
Love them to death. Got it. Go and catch as many as you can and have a good time doing it.
Sounds like we got an idea for the cooking segment next time.
Yeah, northern pike. We're going northern on the pike. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get Chef Kelly to fry those up in a pan for you. So, okay, we will help you continue to get the word out, my friend. It is definitely an issue we need to keep a line on. Hey, before we let you go though, give us an update or a report status on the kokanee. It's June. It's a good time to be over there fishing those kokanee. What's the season been like thus far? Is it kind of a struggle? Do we not have a lot of those big ones in there this year? What's the status?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit less than what we'd say is an average year in terms of the number of kokanee in the reservoir, but there are some around. As the reservoir refills, which it's just getting right up close to refill now, typically the Bureau tries to have it full for the holiday on the 4th. And then the lake stabilizes. Sometimes that 2nd, 3rd, 4th weeks of July can be the best that you'll see all summer.
Yeah.
And the reports I've heard in the last week or two are 1 or 2 fish per angler that kind of know what they're doing, and almost all those fish are coming from Spring Canyon to Whitestone. So that lower 1/3 of the reservoir.
Yeah.
They're not altogether that hard to find this time of year. You can go along with your electronics trolling for trout, and when you see small groups of fish down 40, 50, 60 feet, those are very likely kokanee.
Yeah. Any size to them this year? I mean, we getting some couple 3-pounders or?
Yeah, they're very normal to see 2 to 4 pound kokanee in like Roosevelt, and given their overall abundance and the fact that those things grow based on abundance, right? The more the smaller they are.
Right.
But when there's very few in the reservoir, they're going to be nice size. You got to look for them, but boy, they're going to be dandies. 18, 20 inches is going to be common.
Right. Good point. Well, may just be good enough reason to hook up the boat, Barnum, and head over there, go after some kokanee, and then we'll go try to rid the world of northern pike. So we're on a mission. Chris, always appreciate you taking time to spend time here with us on FHN and fill our brains with lots of useful information. And don't be a stranger. And if you're over here on the west side for work or traveling and it's a Thursday, don't be surprised if I try to invite your butt to sit right here in a chair and join us in studio.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dwayne.
All right. Have a good evening, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, always a ton of information on that guy.
Right.
Again, and Barnum, you and I have talked about this in the past. Guys like him and a handful of others that work for WDFW, the reason they're so passionate about the information is because they're passionate about the fishery. And they're really involved with the fisheries that they manage. And he is, above all, one of the best in managing and overseeing the fisheries that he not only manages but takes part in. So very passionate about the triploid fishery on Roosevelt, the walleye, the kokanee, the whole thing. And has a dislike for northern pike, apparently. So, as we all should. So, awesome. Okay, we are going to jump out for another quick commercial break. We come back. We got a nail in the hot seat. Get your notepads ready. One thing that I have yet to dip the toe in on is sea run cutthroat. We talk about it often and just have not, at least with the fly rod, have not gone out after the sea run cutties with the fly rod, spinning rod and whatnot, sure. But, it's time to pick up the fly rod and go after some sea run cutthroat. Not just going to tell you going to give you a little insight on the wheres. Oftentimes people don't want to talk about where to go, but this is one of those. There's a lot of beach out there. There's a lot of areas you can take small boats to, and there's plenty of sea run cutthroat to be had. And it can be very good at certain times of the year. So we'll delve into sea run cutthroat with Anel. We come back right after this break. Hey, welcome back to FHN. Back here in the studio, of course. And Barnum, I'm always curious as to how many people stick with us through the breaks.
Right.
You know, those numbers go up and down, and usually nobody likes to watch our commercials, apparently.
Right. Well, we got to get some new commercials with some live action.
Yeah, there you go. Something interesting that keeps you
we need to be slaying some fish and
Super Bowl caliber commercials.
Super Bowl caliber, yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, it's coming.
And now at the break, we're talking sea-run cutthroat, and you just happened to mention this area out here, like this part of Puget Sound, Area 13, can have some pretty good sea-run cutthroat fishing.
You know, I'm sure there's some pride up north, but I think if you talk to most people, Area 13, possibly Area 12, the canal's got some great cutthroat fishing too, but I think Area 13's got the most cutthroat habitat by far.
So what do we look for? Let's stick right there. What do we look for? And then we'll get into gear and stuff, but let's talk habitat. What am I looking for, being totally unaware of what I should be looking for? How do I go about this? What's my approach?
You know, the best way to do it if you're not familiar with the sound or ocean fishing is to really think of it like a river. I mean, it's really like a big river. And so if you're looking at a map from up above, you're going to look for points, structure, things like that. So on a smaller scale, you're like, oh, cool, there's a little point here, and the current's going right past it, and there's a back eddy, and there's some boulders. I mean, if you saw that in a river, that's where you'd fish.
Naturally, sure.
And of course, these fish are doing the same things. They're looking for protection from predators. They're looking for food. They're looking to not fight the current 24/7 if they don't have to. So, you know, sometimes those needs coincide, and sometimes they're different. They're like, hey, they're out here in this water they normally wouldn't be because all this food is.
Right.
And they're hungry enough, and there's predators, but again, you know how fish get when there's a feeding frenzy. You know, at other times they're hiding out and they're waiting for food and they're, you know, ambushing stuff opportunistically. But, you know, if you look at it like a river, you know, where would I want to hide out? What has what they need? It's, you know, and that's part of the reason this area is so good. Look at Hammersley, Skookum, Little Skookum, Bud, Tot, all these inlets, they flood.
Right.
They got a lot of protection from major predators because they get so skinny.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then they flood again, and this bait's getting flushed in and out, and the cutthroat thrive in that kind of environment. And there's so much bait moving in and out. There's eelgrass, and you know, it's just great habitat.
So when I want to narrow it down and, you know, increase my opportunity success rate, fishing the flood, fishing the ebb, what's best bang for the buck? It's
totally different in a boat than it is on the shore, right? Especially for a fly angler, you got to, you know, it might be great fishing at that spot at high tide, but you're not fishing it, you know, your back's against the wall like this. But from a boat, my favorite thing to do down here is to scoot up these inlets and then fall with the tide. Go as far as you can, essentially as far as you got time to do, and then I just come out. It's a safe way to run your boat if you don't know the area that well.
That
you're hopefully not getting stuck that well, but you're also flowing along with the food and getting to fish different water. And it doesn't mean I don't turn the motor on and scoot up tide and do the same drift. Obviously, you catch a bunch of fish. You'd be crazy not to.
Right.
But, you know, you generally work in and then work your way out. And again, it keeps your boat somewhat protected. You still got to pay attention, but you're not way up at the end of the inlet when the tide's out. So
let's talk presentation. What are you presenting to these fish? What techniques are you using?
Okay, so almost exclusively you're throwing bait fish patterns. So things that look like little sculpin, little herring, little.
Pretty much
for the cutthroat, pretty much year round.
Is that right?
For the resident coho, you do it gets shrimpier at times, and you can definitely throw shrimp patterns, and people throw little squid patterns and stuff like that. But luckily, they're pretty opportunistic. I mean, you've seen the hundreds of miles of shoreline that are down here, and people talk about sea-run cutthroat fishing, but there's not that many people doing it.
Right.
You know? So these fish don't get a lot of pressure. They're cutthroat. So, you know, with a few exceptions, it's stranger when they're picky than when they're not. You know, you're like, wow, they're actually kind of picky today. I threw, you know, 4 of my favorite patterns, and they finally started eating the 5th, you know, which is a stranger thing. At least for this. You talked about shore access. You know, there's places like the Purdy Spit up further north, closer to, Gig Harbor area. You know, there's Narrows. There's some places that get regular pressure, and you'll notice that you'll see fish jumping out there and you're not hooking them, which is unusual for cutthroat. But not there if you think about it. You know, they're getting flies thrown at them literally every day. And you know, they tend to, I've talked to some of the biologists at Fish and Wildlife, they say that cutthroat have a lot of I believe the term they call it is site fidelity or beach fidelity. They tend to go back to the same areas.
Oh, really?
So if you're fishing, they're doing some great work right now. Fish and Wildlife has a kind of in conjunction with some private conservation groups is doing some great studies of sea run cutthroat and beach seining and tagging them and really trying to figure out more about their life cycle. They're doing a really good job.
Where they go to spawn, they return to the same beachhead, kind of tracking fish.
Exactly.
Right?
And how are because they tag them, they caught the same fish multiple times.
Right.
How are they growing? How many? They're doing a lot about the parasites. They got various sea lice on them.
Yeah.
Well, how are they affecting their health? Is this something that's just symbiotic and they do okay? Just trying to figure out more about them. Because as you know, and this is true of fish around the world, if they're not important food fish, we don't know much about them usually.
Right.
And so it's nice that they're doing this and we're finding out about it. And it's a great success story too, because let's be honest, we just talked about the pike. Everybody's talking about salmon and steelhead and adramys fish in general, and sea run cutthroat are doing really well.
Right.
They're doing really well, and overall their numbers are growing, at least, in the last 20, 30 years. It's one of the few fish you can look at and go, I think there's more of them than there were 30 years ago.
That's interesting.
So,
what would be the best time of year to pursue them? Spring, fall?
Really, spring through fall is the best, and it depends more day to day than that. I like the spring. Personally, the fall is my favorite. The spring is great. They're out, they're done spawning, most of them. They're out there, they're hungry, they're aggressive. But I really like the fall because they're big and they're fat. Most people are spending time doing other things, so you have even fewer people out there. And a lot of times, it's a great combo. You're fishing for fall coho. Maybe there's some chum around.
Sure.
And then you can also go cutthroat fishing.
They're an aggressive little bugger.
Yeah.
We get them in the river, and they hit a K16
exactly.
in the fall, and you pull up a 15-inch cutthroat on a K16 plug, and you're like, this thing is out of his mind, right?
Yeah,
but they are opportunistic, and they're not afraid to go after something that is almost half the size of their body.
No, but when I've thrown larger flies for other fish, just same thing. You obviously weren't targeting cutthroat with a K16.
Well, maybe I am.
big
bait for big fish.
Very big cutthroat. But they'll attack a 4 or 5 inch bait fish pattern and clobber it. The main reason I don't do that is it's hard to hook them, and plus you're gonna you talk about the hook on a pattern like that, it's gonna hurt them. So part of it when you're selecting the size of the bait fish is how easy is it to cast on my 5 or 6 weight fly rod that I already have. How well can they get in their mouth, and am I going to hurt them? Because it's a catch and release fishery. I don't want to bring these fish unnecessarily.
Right.
And then you asked me earlier, that's one of the nice things. This isn't my favorite sea run cutthroat outfit that we have in the shop, but the nice thing for somebody that bought this because they were going over to the Yakima or just wanted to go trout fishing or you just go off your dock, if you came to me and said, hey, I know I bought this from you last year to fish off my dock, I'm actually getting decent at casting, I want to go hit some beaches or maybe hit it off the boat, this isn't the best one, but it'll work.
It'll get it done?
It'll work, and you can go out there and catch fish. And just like I was telling you with the lake fishing, just like any of this stuff, after you experience some success, you want to specialize your tackle a little bit more. You know what, I'm standing on the beach, I'd like a little bit longer rod. I'd like a little bit more powerful rod. I don't need delicacy. I'm not throwing little flies and trying to make them land softly. I'm hucking it in the wind. And so I need a different 6 weight maybe than other people might buy for trout fishing. So
ideally, what would I want? Like a 9, 10-foot 6 weight? 10-foot 6 weight?
Again, for the beach fishing, it's real similar to the needs of that float tube fisherman earlier because, again, as opposed to standing on top of a boat, I might be waded knee-deep in the water. I've got a sloped beach behind me. A lot of anglers will use a 9.5-foot rod. Just get a little bit of extra length, keep the line up off the rocks and off the water. Again, from the boat, I really prefer a little bit shorter rod because I'm fighting the wind out there.
Sure.
And not that you can't, certainly you can use one rod for more than one thing. Right. We'd like to tell our wives that that's not the case, but sometimes you don't need a new rod for every fishing outing.
Yes,
but it's nice that way.
Right. You mentioned resident coho, which is on fire right now, especially up Area 10.
Yeah.
And actually out here in 13, guys are starting to pull a few in different areas and whatnot too. So is my approach, and/or patterns that I'm throwing for my sea run cutties? Is there much difference in what I might pull out of the box for these resident coho?
This time of year, not so much.
Yeah.
They're still eating a lot of bait. When you get the fish that are, like the squawks and fish you have down here, or the later returning fish, it's funny. The further into the sound, the closer they get to their spawning stream, the less they're thinking about food.
Right.
And then now you're using different patterns, generally smaller, brighter stuff, but a variety of things, kind of just to try to anger them, get them to bite out of a response. Because I'm sure you guys have kept coho down here that you caught on bait or on a lure or whatever that imitated a bait, but most of the fish down here, they don't got anything in their stomach.
Not a lot.
They're still eating, when they can,
opportunistic,
kind of thinking about eating, but they're kind of thinking about other things now, right?
Right.
This early opportunity on these, Area 13 obviously, as you know, is open year round, but for the resin coho, like the Area 10 fisheries on fire right now, they're 2 to 4 pounds.
Yeah.
And most that know how to fish that fishery are having great success. And it's a fun fishery to go do with light gear. Whether you're on the troll or even mooching, a little red label, it's just a kick in the pants. And on a fly rod, it would be even just that much more fun. So
it's a real fun way to fish because they're pretty aggressive, like you were saying. So you tend to be stripping the fly really fast, and of course you're doing that through your hands. And if and when they grab it, they're doing the exact same thing the other direction. Right. So there's no, I think I might have got it. I think he's chewing on it. It's all of a sudden you got an angry coho on the other end of your line. So
I guess that's a good question too. So on the sea run cutthroat, what kind of retrieve speed are you working there?
So if you've ever done any kind of streamer fishing in the river, it's real similar. It's a pretty fast retrieve. A lot of times, really fast. At other times, more like that. But in general, and a lot of that has to do with sometimes you're fishing in really strong current and it's already moving pretty good. And you can gauge the attitude of the fish if you're getting a lot of follows, but you're going to change it up. So definitely faster is more the norm, but I've been out there, picking my nose, thinking about what else I could do, and all of a sudden you hook up and go, clearly, I got to slow it down. I've been going too fast, and I take a minute to stare at the trees or something, and I hook up. So.
What is? Give me a little idea of folks that want to, pick up a fly rod and get some lessons, get some hands-on approach. What's your class structure like there at Puget Sound Fly Company? What do you guys offer up?
So we do intro classes, particularly this time of year. You can call the shop. That's the best way to find out when the next available one is. And then what we do probably more than anything is we do private lessons for $50 an hour. And a lot of people just find it's more convenient to their schedule, or they have, it's a little bit like a golf swing, to be honest. Like I keep doing this. So heck, a lot of times I tell people just book a half hour. We can work on the one thing.
Sure.
And I'm there at the shop and I've got help every day, so I'm flexible. Let's do it 1:30 on a Tuesday.
Okay.
And for a lot of guys, it's $50 for up to 2 people. So if you're like, hey, we were both thinking about it, it's pretty cheap and pretty flexible.
What's your business hours there at the shop?
We're open 7 days a week, where it's 10 to 6 on weekdays, 10 to 5 on Saturdays, and 11 to 4 on Sundays.
Okay. Outstanding. Well, excellent information, as I knew it would be. That's hoping to extend the invite, and you graciously accepted. So got you in here to talk a little bit something off the rails a little for many, but I think more and more folks are picking it up because it is just a great way to approach fishing on another level. And no, you don't have to comp an attitude because you picked up a fly rod. We're all fishermen. Just keep it cordial, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, good God, I'm a fly fisherman now, so I can't even talk to you. I'll look at you, bottom.
Let me put my pipe down.
So, all right.
Save it for when I leave.
We're going to jump out for a break. We have the second part. I believe Chef is waiting to finalize his sea bass, kicking some ass in the old kitchen this evening. So I want to see how that finishes up and then get in there and taste it, of course, when we're done. So jump out for a quick break. We come back. You're going to be in the kitchen with Chef Kelly and Sherry for the final cook on the sea bass. And we'll see you right after that.
At Metals Supermarkets, we understand your need for fast access to a wide variety of metals. So we've made it easy. Our network of stores carries a wide variety of metal in all different types, shapes, sizes, and grades, with no required minimum order size. Who could ask for more? Simply tell us your dimensions online, on the phone, or in store, and we'll cut or process the metal to your desired size, often while you wait. We offer same-day service and can deliver the metal right to your door or job site. We even source hard-to-find metals, so no matter what you're looking for, Metal Supermarkets can provide it for you. And we're conveniently located with brick-and-mortar stores in Seattle and Portland, so you can check out our extensive stock for yourself. Superior customer service is guaranteed. Quality service from real people who know metal. We are the small quantity metal experts. To place an order, simply call a store to talk to one of our knowledgeable customer service representatives. Fill out a quote request online, order off of our e-commerce website, or visit one of our many locations and pick out the metal you want. Whether you're a small or large business, government, homeowner, or hobbyist, we make it easy for you to buy the exact metal and just the amount you need. We've been doing this for over 30 years, so we know how to get it done. Metal Supermarkets, the convenience stores for metal. Visit or call a Metal Supermarket store near you today.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the kitchen, and we're finishing up this sea bass.
Yes, the
recipe.
sea bass.
So what's left?
So if you're just joining us now, we're doing a steamed sea bass with a Chinese black bean sauce over jade pesto rice. So we have our fish, it's already done. Our black bean sauce already done. It smells amazing, super strong and potent, and it's going to be pow. Yeah. A little salty, a little spicy, a little bit of everything. So now we're going to finish up doing our pesto, our jade pesto. So this is all this is a different version of a pesto. Okay. So, essentially, you're going to have some kind of herbs. So we're going to throw a couple different herbs in here.
My basil plant apart.
Yeah.
I don't keep them alive for long anyway,
what it's for, though.
Might as well use it.
Right? So we got some cilantro in there. Got some green onions.
Put a little extra in there.
A little extra? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit of ginger. Remember, ginger's really strong, so don't go too crazy.
Right.
A little bit of garlic. I'm doing my version. It's going to be a little bit of cashews in there.
That I see you added at the last minute in the break. Yeah.
Inspiration.
Making it up as you go. Oh, inspiration. Okay, that's what the chefs call it. Yeah.
And we're going to add a little bit of sesame oil.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Little oil.
Just a little bit of oil just to give it some viscosity
Texture too.
Well, to kind of make things work here.
Yeah.
This is the part of a food processor that you need to kind of deal with, especially when you're running with just such a small amount. You just scrape it down. And make sure all that sides, because they'll get thrown up there, and you'll have big bits up here, and then all stuff on the bottom is all pureed. So just
I'm backing away this time.
Scrape it down. Good. All right. So if you could put that into there, and I'll work on the rice.
Okay.
Of course, I'm using my favorite, short grain rice or cow rose rice.
Short grain?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
This is still pretty thick.
I want it to be thick.
Yep. Pick up the mess.
Look at that color.
Wow.
Just beautiful, vibrant green color. That's what we wanted. Looking good, Chef. Smells amazing in here. Okay, we're ready to plate.
So you mixed it all in the rice. Okay.
Yep, mix all in the rice. I'm trying to keep it all on the spot. Take care of that, please. Okay, and then we're going to gently remove our fish. And this is the reason why I put some kind of buffer down, is because of this right here.
Oh.
Because you're going to try to pick this up and you're going to shred it.
Oh boy.
Yep. See? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I thought the problem was going to be. So.
Can you use both?
Yeah, I'm going to use both. Okay, so we're going to go like that. Okay, and then,
those on there?
yeah, no.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, take those.
Okay.
And then here's our beautiful Chinese black bean sauce. There you
wow.
go. And yeah, there you go.
Another amazing dish, of course.
There you go.
Yeah.
And let's say it real quick.
Okay.
So yeah, this is meant to be strong. It's it's a very flavorful, very traditional ingredients for Chinese. So yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Peasy.
All
right. Well, we're going to go ahead and dig in, and we're going to throw it back to the guys in the studio.
I think.
Hey, welcome back. We're back.
We're back.
I just saw the light flick, and I'm like, oh, hey, we're back.
Here we are. We were talking tuna.
We're talking
tuna. We acted like we got caught with our hands in the cookie jar. We were talking about we were fishing anyway.
Talking tuna, and they were in there cooking sea bass. So
right.
That looked amazing. He's got some type of black bean going with that, and I don't know what it's going to taste like, but it looks pretty darn good.
And we're going to find out.
We're going to find out. So speaking of which, saltwater creatures and whatnot, we are, again, down in Oahu on Saturday. And I guess I'll run down real quick a few of the folks we're talking to. Eric Erdman, who reached out to us, who is affiliated with, actually, I believe he's the president of the Tuna Club down there.
Right.
Want us to come down to our show. And he's going to basically give a rundown, a segment with you and I, Barnum, on what this whole Tuna Club is all about, how folks get involved.
I'm interested in that.
Some of the charitable stuff they do throughout the year. Got some fishing reports we're going to touch off by that time of day, because those that are going out that morning to chase whatever it is they're going to go out and chase, they'll come back with some fishing reports and kind of just get a gist of what that is, because the folks that'll be there, they understand what they're there for, and the 300 or so people walking around and hanging out and doing their thing, it's an annual event. For all you tuning in and watching, to kind of put eyes on it for the first time, go, wow, this tuna stuff is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking salmon fishing and tuna and halibut and lingcod and all the stuff you get out there out of the ocean, but they do a real nice job down there, and I've been down there before for some events in Oahu, and it's just a great place to be. Yeah. Anytime you're in the ocean, the ports, it's just a good time.
Oh, it just feels good.
It just feels good. So we'll talk with Eric. We're also going to talk with Matt Rowland. He's a member of the team, Team Fortunate, who actually went down for Costa Rica there in a world championship that they won several weeks ago or last month. They qualified for that through the OTC, Oregon Tuna Classic. They were the representative team that went down, competed. It's a great story. He didn't. I don't think a lot of folks had them picked to win. Right. To be honest, they're competing with some pretty high caliber operations going on down there, and lo and behold, a little team out of Oregon went on down there to Costa Rica World Championship and they won. So we'll talk about the types of fish that they pursue, how they actually keep score, calculate, and you go in multiple days, and they pulled it off, man. So we'll talk to him about him and his team and what it took to get there and how many years they've been pursuing this and working through the Oregon Tuna Classic as a qualifier and just what that all means. Again, those who are involved in the Washington Tuna Classic, the Deep Canyon Challenge, or the OTC, and all the money's generated for those events and the amount of tuna caught and just all the stuff that goes into this. If you haven't put eyes on it before, we're trying to help you understand that there's a lot going on in the realm of tuna, and there's a lot of money's generated for charitable contribution, and it's kind of a big deal. So
it's a fast-growing fishery. Yeah, absolutely. Really fast-growing.
Yep. And to show you how fast it is, as little as 7 or 8 years ago, doing other programs, had Del Stevens on. We were talking about tuna fishing at that time, and folks now taking the first step to get onto a 1 or 2 day charter boat type of an operation that would run out for a day, stay overnight, get you on the tuna grounds, they'd fish and come back in and expose you to the opportunity of fishing tuna. And, those were for larger operations with bigger boats and would get you out on the waters and expose you to a type of tuna fishing with the types of rods and reels they had for the recreational opportunity at that time. Because previous to that, several years ago, it was just commercial guys out there.
Yep.
And when people started talking tuna fishing off of Washington Coast, I was like, what are you talking about tuna fish Washington Coast? Don't you go down to California for that? It's like, no, they're out there off the Washington Coast, and here's how they do it. So the evolution of this, a lot of it's secondary to the lack of opportunity in other fisheries as we've evolved in our fisheries and ocean fisheries. The first thing you start seeing, 8, 10 years ago, where guys are like, oh, I'm gonna get a new boat. But I think I'm going to go 2 feet longer, a foot wider, and I'm going to put 2 motors on the back versus 1. Right. Substantial increase in financial obligation, but to them at the time it's worth it. It's like, I'm going to start running the ocean. I'm going to start running the ocean. And when the tuna gets in 30 miles, I'm going to start going after tuna, right? So the big switch there was the evolution of the boats. And person stepping up and willing to put up that price tag and buy that boat, right? And then as it has continued to evolve, one of the segments we'll do down there in Oahu with Del Stevens in the how-to segment of FHN for the Saturday is the evolution of the gear.
Right.
Because, again, when I refer to 6, 8, 9 years ago when we're talking about it, there's, a rod for fishing bait and there's a rod for jigging. Well, now they have kind of like your muscle categories. They have fast twitch, slow twitch. They have different jig presentations and speed of retrieve. We have reels. If you remember, we had Dell on a couple weeks ago. Reels that will pick up 48 inches of line with one crank of the reel. 4 feet. One crank of the handle, right?
Need that fall Chinook fishing.
Oh man, coho. Those coho. So when you start talking about gear ratios and the size of spool diameter and the amount of line they collect on any given retrieve, and you're fishing, 75 to 100 feet down in some cases, and how fast you can bring that back up and get to the fish towards the surface, it's the whole dynamic of it has changed, and the rods and the sensitivity and the way they give action to the lures and the speed of the retrieve and different types of rod to fish for bait. So we're going to break all that down with Dell. That's going to be a great segment. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, we're going to have Aaron on talking about the battlefish excitement there. We're going to try to pry out of his mouth if we're getting a season 2 of Battlefish, because it's been a pleasure to watch and completely enjoy it, going back watching it for a second time just to get caught up on it again. But really a great show. I love those types of competitive shows.
It's going to be a great episode for you guys to watch here on Saturday if you've been thinking about going tuna fishing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because this is going to get you excited to go. And you won't regret it. I mean, like you're saying, there's 2 or 3 day charters. There's 1 day trips. I mean, there's so many different ways to go target tuna now. A lot of the different fishermen do it different. But it is one of the hardest fighting, best tasting fish you will ever get your hands on. And if you're on a bait stop and you're plugging 40, 50 tuna into a boat and there's blood splattering everywhere and tuna going on the deck all around you and everybody on the boat's hooked up, I mean, there is no euphoria in fishing anything like it.
You can't find that anywhere else.
No.
Even your best day of Chinook fishing on a river, you're going to get into that.
I think hands down the hardest fighting fish in Washington, and you know, they average, what, 15 to 20 pounds? I mean, that's a lot of fighting.
They swim 50 miles an hour.
I mean, I've caught some big sturgeon, big 7-gill shark. You reel down on a 30-pound albacore, and you can put everything you have into that thing and not budge him.
Forget about it. Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So we will definitely get out on the tuna grounds this year, no doubt about it. And this is kind of this kind of kicks it off for us. Although it is the kickoff day for salmon season and all that, but to me it's kickoff day for ocean, and things start happening after that. And we talked to Ian a couple of weeks ago or last week, and he was talking about the progression of the summer as you get into it, and when he finally stops fishing so much salmon, he goes out and starts targeting tuna. So plenty of time left, just getting started in that regard. So with that, Anel, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, I hope we didn't bother you too much. I hope it's worth your time to come on down. And
you kept my hands free of bait. I can go back to work.
Not stinking like shrimp or like anchovy.
No egg juice on me.
Yes. Don't feel like you've sinned or cheated this evening. You can, with a clear conscience, you can sleep tonight and not toss and turn, right?
They made me touch bait.
Oh my God.
One of them.
There was something called egg cure there.
You have to drive out of here and get to the closest Catholic church.
I'll jump right into the lake and just.
We might have to put some egg cure on his fork so when he leaves, he has
there you go. A little bit with him. No, it's been a pleasure, man. I hope to spend more time together and get out there and you can show me a thing or two in the realm of the fly rod and see where we can go with that.
Yeah, so, you might have to hop in with us and we'll show you a thing or two about not a fly rod.
That'd be a lot of fun. You put gloves on, don't stain those.
We won't have to tell anybody about those things.
Right.
Perfect. That's good.
If you want to troll a fly while I'm trolling a herring, you fly at it.
You just do what you got to do, man. That is going to do it this week for us right here on FHN. Again, join us Saturday. If you can't make it down to Ilwaco, we will be live at 4:30 starting, if this all comes together, Blake, right? So we're going to make it happen. David IT is not accessible, so we have the other part of the team that's joining us to make sure this gets off the ground successfully, or somebody's going to be in trouble.
No, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna knock it out of the park. So join us if you will. Love to see all the folks tuning in on the show's social medias there on Saturday, and we're going to bring you a great show. So until then, we will see you Saturday, and of course next week back here Thursday, 6 p.m. on FHN.